Okay, I want you to imagine a politician. Just for a second, close your eyes and picture the standard archetype.
Right. The tailored suit, the big smile.
Exactly. You're seeing someone kissing a baby, shaking hands. It's all very polished, very safe, uh, incredibly predictable.
It's the clean image we're kind of trained to expect.
Yeah. Now, I want you to take that mental image, ball it up, and just throw it directly into a wood chipper. Because today, we are talking about a man who looks like he slept in his clothes for a week. And he probably did. A man who ran away from home at 12, who tried to start like a utopian dictatorship in the Bolivian jungle, and who, as a sitting governor, declared martial law not once, not twice, but nearly 50 times.
And we're not talking about martial law for, a natural disaster or an invasion. He was using the National Guard to enforce ticket sales at college football games.
And to invade the border of Texas over a bridge toll. We are diving deep into the life of William H. Murray, better known to history as Alfalfa Bill. He was the 9th governor of Oklahoma, a key architect of the state's constitution. But, looking at our source material today, calling him a governor feels like calling a hurricane a light breeze.
It really does. He is, without a doubt, one of the most paradoxical figures in American political history. You just have to understand, this guy is a study in extremes.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're not just recounting a biography, we're trying to get at the mechanics of a populist strongman. How does a runaway kid become a political powerhouse?
And how can someone simultaneously save people from starvation during the Great Depression while trampling on the very democracy he swore to protect?
And crucially, how do we reckon with a legacy that's built on both, economic salvation for the poor and this deeply entrenched systemic racism and anti-Semitism?
Because you just cannot tell his story without both sides of that coin. It's impossible.
It is a complicated, messy, and frankly, a wild story.
Yeah.
But to understand the guy waving a revolver at the Texas Rangers in the 1930s, we had to go back to the beginning.
We do.
The sources, they paint his early life almost like a Charles Dickens novel, but set in the, brutal heat of the Wild West.
It's a really grim start. Born in 1869 in Collinsville, Texas. His mother dies when he's just 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
His father remarries, and by all accounts, the home life was just toxic. There was tension, there was poverty. So in 1881, at just 12 years old, William makes a decision that really defines the rest of his life. He leaves.
And let's just pause on that. 12 years old, most kids are worried about homework. He didn't just run away for a night. He went fully independent.
He was on his own. He spent his entire teenage years picking cotton, chopping wood, working as a bricklayer. It is so hard to overstate the level of grit you'd need to survive that in the late 19th century.
There's no safety net.
None. If he didn't work, he didn't eat. And that kind of experience, it creates a very specific kind of personality, someone who believes, fundamentally, that they owe nothing to anyone.
Right, total self-reliance. But usually that kind of hard labor life doesn't leave room for intellectual pursuits. You're just too tired to read.
But he was obsessed. Obsessed is the right word. He had this insatiable hunger to understand how the world worked. He was selling books door to door just to pay his tuition at the College Hill Institute.
And then he does something even more audacious.
He teaches himself law.
That part always blows my mind. He didn't go to some prestigious law school. No professors, no study groups.
No. He sat down with the books, he read the law, he absorbed it, and then he passed the Texas bar exam in 1897.
That self-taught thing seems so important for his psychology later on.
Yeah.
Like if you teach yourself the law, you probably feel like you understand it better than everyone else.
Absolutely. It breeds a certain intellectual arrogance. He felt he knew the true meaning of the law because he had wrestled with it alone. But the real turning point, the moment that launches the legend of Alfalfa Bill that happens in 1898, he crosses the river into Tishomingo,
Which was Indian territory at the time.
specifically the capital of the Chickasaw Nation. Remember, Oklahoma isn't a state yet. It's a complex territory of tribal sovereignty. And this is where the runaway bricklayer makes a very, very strategic move.
He meets Mary Alice Harrell.
He does. And looking at her family tree, this isn't just a romance.
No, it's a political merger.
It is. Mary Alice was the niece of Douglas H. Johnston, who was the governor of the Chickasaw Nation. So by marrying her, Murray didn't just get a wife, he got legitimacy. He gained status within the tribe and, crucially, the right to practice in Chickasaw courts.
So he leverages this connection, becomes a legal advisor to the governor. It's so ironic, isn't it? He builds his foundation on indigenous sovereignty and tribal law.
Which, as we'll see, he has no problem discarding when it doesn't suit him. That's a recurring theme with Murray. He uses structures, the Chickasaw Nation, the Democratic Party, the U.S. Constitution as tools.
When the tool works, he uses it.
And when it doesn't, he breaks it.
Before we get to the state building, I have to ask about the name. Alfalfa Bill. It sounds like a caricature. Was he just really into farming, or was this like a marketing gimmick?
A bit of both, really. He was a
Yeah.
farmer, and he was an early proponent of cultivating alfalfa in the region. It restores nitrogen to the soil. It was actually very progressive agriculture.
If it wasn't random.
No, but the name was a branding exercise. Around 1902, he was campaigning, and he developed this unique stump speech style. He would pivot seamlessly from, like, complex political theory to a lecture on the best soil conditions for growing alfalfa.
That is incredibly specific. I mean, can you imagine going to a rally today and the candidate starts explaining how to compost?
But it was genius. A reporter caught one of these speeches and dubbed him Alfalfa Bill. And it stuck. It stuck because it signaled to every rural voter, this guy is one of us. He knows the dirt. It was his outsider card.
So he's got the brand, he's got the legal chops, he has the connections. Now we hit 1906. Oklahoma's gearing up for statehood. They need a constitution.
And Murray manages to position himself as the president of the Constitutional Convention.
And he didn't just preside over it, right?
Yeah.
He dominated it.
Oh, completely. He was the force of nature in that room. He worked with Charles Haskell, who became the first governor, but everyone knew Murray was the intellectual engine. He wrote huge chunks of that document himself.
And this is where we have to peel back that founding father mythology.
Yeah.
Because while he's writing the laws for a new state, he is actively hard-coding racism into the system.
We have to be really clear about this. This wasn't just a man of his time prejudice where he quietly held bad views. Murray was an active architect of segregation.
He explicitly pushed for it.
He did. He pushed for Jim Crow laws to be written directly into the Constitution itself. He wanted the separation of races to be the supreme law of the state from day one.
There's a story from the convention records that just illustrates his mindset so perfectly. It involves the staff at the convention hall. It's so petty, but it says so much.
It's a chilling detail. Murray looked at the staff and decided to rearrange them based on his racial hierarchy. He fired all the black clerks and all the white janitors.
And then just switch them?
Then he switched them. He hired the white men to be clerks and the black men to be janitors.
That is such a deliberate display of power. He's physically rearranging human beings to fit his worldview that black people belong in servitude and white people belong in administration.
Exactly. He's on record stating that he believed African Americans were failures in professional roles like law or medicine. He advocated for segregated schools, strict anti-miscegenation laws. He saw the state constitution not just as a legal document, but as a mechanism to preserve a white supremacist social order.
So you have this paradox forming. To the white tenant farmer, he's a hero fighting the banks. To the black Oklahoman, he is a tyrant solidifying their oppression.
And that duality, it follows him everywhere. But before he takes the governor's office, there's this weird interlude. A really weird interlude.
The Bolivian adventure. This is the part of the research where I had to double-check that we weren't reading a fiction script.
I know.
Because it sounds like the plot of a movie that got rejected for being too unrealistic.
It does sound made up. It's the 1920s. Murray has lost a run for Congress in 1916, lost a run for governor in 1918. He's bitter. He thinks the U.S. is going to hell. So he decides to build his own society.
Naturally. If you can't win the election, just start a new country.
Essentially, yes. He negotiates with the government of Bolivia to lease about 42,000 acres of land. He calls the colony Aguarenda, and he recruits families from Oklahoma to go with him, selling it as this paradise where the common man could live free.
But it wasn't a democracy. He wasn't starting a republic.
Oh, no. He went there to be a feudal lord. He wrote the Murray Code for the colonists, a list of laws they had to sign. And these are people who sold everything to follow him to South America.
What was in the code?
Well, some of it was standard puritanical stuff. No brothels, no saloons. But then you get the micromanagement. Murray owned all the agricultural equipment.
All of it.
All of it. He had to personally approve any transfer of land. And my favorite detail, which is just so bizarre, every colonist was required to build a poultry shed within 2 years.
A mandatory poultry shed.
Mandatory. It shows you his mindset. He wasn't just setting broad policy. He wanted to control how you farmed, where you lived, and where you kept your chickens. Total control.
So how did the Kingdom of Murray work out?
Disastrously. Just disastrously. The environment was brutal, insects like you wouldn't believe, oppressive heat, rain that washed everything away. But the biggest failure was Murray's own arrogance.
What happened?
He had leased this empty land only to arrive and find it was already occupied by indigenous people who, surprisingly, didn't want to be evicted by a guy from Oklahoma in a rumpled suit.
It's that colonial mindset again, just assuming the land is there for the taking.
The colonists were miserable. The reality just did not match the brochure. Most left within months, feeling scammed. By 1928, the Bolivian president canceled the lease. Murray came home broke.
So picture this. It's 1929. The stock market has just crashed. The Dust Bowl is starting to turn the sky black. Murray is 60 years old, penniless, a failed colonizer. And he says, I'm going to run for governor.
And the establishment just laughed at him. The newspapers treated him like a joke. They called him eccentric, washed up, a relic. But Murray understood something they didn't. He understood the sheer desperation of the people.
The Dust Bowl wasn't just bad weather. It was apocalyptic.
Exactly. And Murray launched a campaign that was visceral. His slogan was bread, butter, bacon, and beans. It wasn't abstract economic theory. It was, I will feed you.
But we have to look at the other side of that populism. Because while he was promising bacon and beans, he was also using a very different slogan to identify the enemies.
Right. This is the 3 C's slogan. He told voters he was fighting against corporations, carpetbaggers, and coons.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, carpetbaggers is an old derogatory term for Northerners who came south to profit after the Civil War.
And the 3rd C is, of course, a horrific racial slur. It was a strategy of punching up and punching down at the same time.
How so?
He attacked the big banks and oil companies, punching up, which thrilled the poor, but he also attacked black people punching down, which consolidated his right base, and it was effective. He won the 1930 election in a landslide.
So now the man who tried to play king in Bolivia is actually in charge of a state during the worst economic crisis in modern history.
And he doesn't govern like a normal politician. He doesn't wait for committees. He governed like a general. He realized the legislature was too slow, so he just bypassed them. He used the National Guard as his personal enforcement arm.
The numbers here are staggering. He declared martial law over 30 times.
Most governors go their whole careers without doing it once. He was doing it every other week for everything. And the most famous incident, the one that really captures the madness of the era, is the Toll Bridge War.
This story is wild. It feels like an action movie standoff. So walk us through it.
Okay, so Oklahoma and Texas are separated by the Red River. A private company owned a toll bridge. But the states were building a new free bridge nearby.
To help commerce.
Right. But the toll bridge company sued to stop the free bridge from opening. A federal judge agreed and ordered the free bridge closed.
Okay, standard legal dispute. The courts rule, you follow the ruling.
Usually, yes.
Oh.
But the governor of Texas, he responds to the court and barricades the Texas side of the free bridge. Well, Murray didn't care about the court order. He declared martial law.
Over a bridge.
Over a bridge. He sent the Oklahoma National Guard to the river. The reports say they were armed with old revolvers looking pretty ragtag. Murray himself went down there, allegedly wearing a gun on his hip, and he ordered the bridge forced open.
He literally invaded the Texas border.
He invaded Texas, and Texas retreated. The public loved it. Here's a guy ignoring the federal courts, ignoring the neighboring state, just to save them a few cents on a toll. It cemented his image.
But that sets such a dangerous precedent. If you can ignore the courts for a bridge, what else can you ignore them for?
Exactly. And he applied that same logic to the oil industry. Oil prices had crashed because of overproduction. Oil was selling for pennies a barrel. The economy was collapsing because oil was too cheap.
So what does Alfalfa Bill do? Does he ask for a subsidy?
No. He declares martial law in the oil fields. He sends in the troops and orders 3,000 oil wells to shut down at gunpoint. He literally told them nobody pumps a drop until the price hits $1 a barrel.
That is massive government intervention. It sounds almost communist, which is so ironic given his politics later.
It's deeply ironic because Murray hated socialism and despised the New Deal. But here he was, manipulating the global oil market with the military. And again, it worked. The shortage drove the price up. He saved the independent oil men.
It raises this really difficult question, doesn't it? The democratic institutions, the courts, the legislature were failing. People were starving. Murray stepped in and broke the law to fix the problem. Can you be a hero and a tyrant at the same time?
That is the central tension of his life. We have to remember he donated his own salary to feed the poor when the legislature wouldn't pass a relief bill.
Right. Yeah.
He lived in the governor's mansion, but the place was a mess, full of people asking for help, and he was literally emptying his pockets for them. But he destroyed the concept of the rule of law to do it.
And eventually that strongman act stops being charming and starts getting alarming. He had his eyes on the White House, didn't he?
He did. In 1932, he ran for president. He thought the country wanted what Oklahoma had, a dictator who got things done.
But he was running against Franklin D. Roosevelt. That's a tough matchup.
And this is where Murray's nastiness really backfired. He didn't just debate policy. He launched a smear campaign claiming that FDR had syphilis.
Which was a complete fabrication.
Pure lies. It just showed how unhinged he was becoming. And the country looked at Murray, this guy in rumpled clothes shouting conspiracy theories, and then they looked at FDR, who projected calm and confidence.
He was crushed.
Crushed at the convention. And after that loss, he seems to spiral. He's no longer the fun populist who opens bridges. He becomes bitter, extremely toxic.
He turned on FDR in the New Deal.
Yeah, viewing them as federal overreach, which again, so ironic given his own record. But his later years were defined by his writing. He published books that were essentially screeds of hate.
We have titles like The Negro's Place in the Call of Race.
Yes. He tried to use pseudoscience to justify segregation. He was writing about how Jewish people should be deported to Madagascar. I mean, he wasn't just a politician anymore. He was a propagandist for white supremacy and anti-Semitism.
It's important to sit with that. Because for a long time, the history books in Oklahoma just treated him as this colorful character. Oh, that's just Alfalfa Bill, the quirky governor.
Right. They focused on the Bridge War and the Alfalfa speeches. There's a Lake Murray. There was a Murray Hall at Oklahoma State University. The state celebrated the action hero and conveniently ignored the architect of segregation.
But that is changing now.
It is. In 2020, Oklahoma State University removed his name from Murray Hall. We are in a period of reevaluation. We're realizing that you can't separate the man who fed the poor from the man who institutionalized Jim Crow.
They're the same person.
They're the same person. You can't have the bridge without the racism.
It's the cost of populism, isn't it? When you empower a leader to break the rules because you like the outcome. Like opening a bridge, you are handing them the sword they can use to cut down anyone they don't like.
Precisely. Murray shows us the seduction of the strong man. It feels good when they're fighting for you. When he was fighting the banks, the poor whites loved him, but that power is never contained. His efficiency came at the cost of democracy and human rights.
So when we look at the legacy of Alfalfa Bill today, it's not just a history lesson, it's a warning.
It's a warning about the trade-offs we accept in moments of crisis. Murray saved lives with his economic policies, there's no doubt about that. But he also left a stain on the state's constitution and culture that took decades to even begin to scrub out.
A fascinating, dark, and essential deep dive into American history. It leaves you wondering, if a politician showed up today promising to fix everything by ignoring the courts and mobilizing the military, would we cheer them on? Or would we see the ghost of Alfalfa Bill?
That is the question.
Something to mull over. That's it for this deep dive into William H. Murray. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.